I am vaccinated, so ideally I would not like to wear masks again, but if it's for the safety of others and for our country, I do recommend wearing masks.
Mask up, even if you're vaxxed up. How Americans feel about the new CDC indoor mask guidelines and what that change means for kids and teachers heading back to school in the fall. And we have a deal. A bipartisan group of lawmakers agreeing on an infrastructure package, but do they have the votes to pass it? We start today with new reaction to the updated CDC mask guidance. NBC News correspondent Heidi Przybyla joining me now. Heidi, the CDC advising everyone in K through 12 schools to wear masks. That includes students and teachers. How are schools adjusting their plans for the new year, given that new guidance?
Allison, certainly it's going to be unlike any back to school that you or I have ever experienced. And it's going to look really different regionally because these CDC guidelines, they're guidelines. They're just that. They're recommendations. And ultimately, the local districts and the localities can make their own decision. So on the one hand, you see a lot of these states that are bathed in red right now, meaning high positivity rates, are also some of the states that have actually banned mask mandates. So they've banned schools and other businesses from imposing mask mandates. That's going to be one side of the coin. On the other side are schools like one I visited today in Prince George's County, Maryland, which had experienced devastating losses from COVID, very high positivity rates all throughout this pandemic. And for them, they imposed mask mandates even before the CDC made those recommendations. Here's what the superintendent had to say about it not even being a difficult decision.
We have been having serious conversations about how to support our families, students, and the community we serve. And from the beginning of the pandemic, we've made tough decisions that ultimately help to protect them. We are already wearing masks in our summer school program and in our offices, so we just didn't change the direction. And while we have 50% of our school-age students from 12 up who have already received the vaccine, we still know that there are two ways to keep people safe. The first one is the vaccine, and the second one is to wear masks.
So you heard her there. 50% of the children 12 and up already fully vaccinated. That compares to about 30% nationwide, and yet it is in those 30% areas that we are seeing the most resistance to masks, Allison.
Yeah. So Heidi, how about parents? What are they telling you about having their kids wear masks in school this fall? Are they into it, against it, mixed bag? What are you getting from them?
Definitely feels initially, and again, this is just coming since yesterday with this guidance, right? But initially, it feels like more of a mixed bag than in those early days of the pandemic when we had no vaccine and no idea how much this could affect children. That said, it does feel like two different Americas. In the Americas that have experienced heavy losses. If you walk around, for instance, Prince George's County, Maryland, there's many people already in masks. If you walk around places like the Thumb of Michigan, where many individuals don't believe that COVID is that big of a deal, there's going to be a lot of resistance to the masks. But ultimately, this is going to be very, very localized. In places like Prince George's County, the school superintendent, as well as the Parent-Teacher Association head, told me that the parents and the students and the school officials are all locking arms. Take a listen.
I haven't heard any negative feedback that as in my opinion, we are, in favor for everybody wear face masks for, come back to school as a safety precaution for everybody.
So it is not that some of these other areas won't move in that direction, Allison. As a matter of fact, we are seeing in areas of Missouri and other parts of the country where they've been hit heavy more recently by COVID, more people are starting to get vaccinated, and potentially they may be more open to masking. But this is going to be a hot, hot issue as kids go back to school.
Oh, it sure is. And I have a feeling it's going to be evolving quite a bit in the month until then. Heidi, thanks so much for your reporting. Now to mask reaction out of New Jersey. NBC News correspondent Rahema Ellis is in Ridgewood. So, Rahema, you're in a county that has pretty substantial COVID transmission rates. What are you hearing from residents there about the indoor mask recommendation? What do they think about it?
Well, this is also a state that has one of the nation's highest vaccination rates. So there is a willingness, I think, among people here to do what they can to keep themselves safe. But there's also mask fatigue. And the recommendations come at a time when people would rather not hear it. But listen to what people said to me today about when asked whether they think that this masking, again, is a good idea. Take a listen.
It can stop the spread of a very deadly virus. It's absolutely fine.
I think everyone needs to use their personal judgment and be safe.
For, young, healthy individuals like ourselves, I don't think that we're at much of a risk.
It's a personal decision for everyone, and I am vaccinated, so ideally I would not like to wear masks again, but if it's for the safety of others and for our country, I do recommend wearing masks.
One of the things I should tell you, too, just a totally unscientific observation. Walking around the street, people are not wearing masks, but we went into a couple of stores and people were voluntarily having their masks on. So there is some willingness here, I think, to comply with it. And again, the majority of the people who we spoke to said they're willing to do it if it will keep them safe. But not everyone feels that way.
Yeah, Rahema, I know it's unscientific, but I've noticed the same thing as well. You walk on the streets, people might not be wearing a mask, but you run into the grocery store, maybe into the post office, and people are masking up even if they don't have to. You mentioned earlier an important point about New Jersey, that the state did pretty well as far as vaccinations, but they are seeing a spike in cases right now. Tell us more about what's going on.
What they're seeing here is the numbers are going in the wrong direction. It's over 50+% of a positive COVID rates going on here. And as a result of that, what we heard today from the governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, was that he is recommending that people here go along with the CDC guidelines of masking up indoors, whether you're vaccinated or not, saying that he thinks that this is the way to keep people here safe. Allison?
All right, Rahema Ellis in Ridgewood, New Jersey. Thanks so much. In Arkansas, the governor and his COVID task force looking to expand hospital capacity. This week, that state reported the most COVID deaths in a single day since March. NBC News correspondent Shaq Brewster takes us inside an ICU in Little Rock to show us what nurses and doctors there are battling.
Hi there, Allison. Well, doctors are saying they fear that the darkest days are still to come in the days and weeks ahead. And we know the pattern here. We know that it starts with the increase in cases, then that leads to the increase in hospitalizations, and then the increase in deaths. And across the state of Arkansas, we know that just yesterday, more than 1,000 people are in the hospital fighting this virus. That's the highest level you've seen since the end of January. We know earlier this week, we learned that there were more deaths in a single day reported since any point since the month of March. So doctors say hospitals are full, especially at this hospital behind me. They have a record number of patients inside the hospital. I got to tour the ICU yesterday, and the doctor showed me areas that were free of COVID patients just a few weeks ago, but now are full of those patients. They said that this is something that is taking over the entire hospital as the staffing is still suffering and those staff levels are still short. And this is not just happening at this hospital. It's really happening all across the state, including a children's hospital in this state. You know, officials are saying it's because of the Delta variant clashing with the unvaccinated population in this state, and that's causing some frustration among medical officials. Listen how one doctor, the chancellor here, put it to me just yesterday.
I'm frustrated that there's so much misinformation out about the vaccines, but more than anything else, I'm concerned that we haven't figured out how to make everybody understand the safety of the vaccine and the fact that, you know, I've got 70 people in the hospital with complications of COVID-19 right now. I've had 0 patients ever with complications from the vaccine.
Now, the governor is also traveling across the state to push folks to get vaccinated. Yesterday, he met with state lawmakers to see if there was any way to possibly reverse the mask mandate ban that the state has had in place. You get a sense that vaccinations are the way out of this, and that will be the focus for not only the medical community, but also elected leaders. Allison?
Simone Biles will not defend her Olympic all-around title in Tokyo tomorrow. The gymnast announcing she is dropping out of the individual competition a day after she withdrew from the team final to focus on her mental health. All right, I want to bring in one of the most decorated Olympians in history, 12-time Olympic medalist Jenny Thompson. Jenny, we're so psyched that you're here. So let's start with Simone Biles, pulling out of tomorrow's individual all-around final after she withdrew from the team competition yesterday to focus on her mental health. It is hard to put your mental health first under normal circumstances, but when the entire world is watching you, that is something else entirely. You've competed in 4 Olympics. Can you talk to us about the intense pressure that athletes like Simone Biles are dealing with in Tokyo and what you dealt with yourself?
Yes. First, I want to say I really respect Simone Biles for her decision and for her willingness and forthcomingness to talk about that this is a mental health issue. It's something that's hard to talk about, even, with her family or friends. And to say it on international television, I really admire her to bring this to the forefront. Yes, I was in 4 Olympics. The amount of pressure, from the media mainly, is intense, and
don't be sorry. It's the truth.
It's difficult. I mean, we are taught all along as athletes to enjoy the process and to focus on the process, hard work, enjoy these things, and success will come. And not to focus on the medals. But when it comes to the Olympics, that's what all of the external forces are saying what's important. And it is very stressful. My first one, I went into the Olympics, the world record holder in the 100 freestyle, and I got silver, and I felt like a failure. And it was, hard for my teammates and people to look at me. I mean, I represented my country the best that I could. I was proud of myself. But it was a weird situation, and same goes for the other 3. It's always just a lot of stress.
Yeah, it sure sounds like it. And you bring up such an important point, right? I mean, silver at the Olympics, that's pretty amazing. And we put so much focus on first place and gold, and my goodness.
Yes. And medal counts and all these things, we have these 5 or 6 marquee athletes that are coming into the games, they're on TV all the time, and we talk about them like they're going to win gold, but they haven't competed yet. And the Olympics is a crazy emotional roller coaster, and you cannot count on anything until the event is done. And so I've been saying that all along to my husband as we watch TV at night. It's just, I feel for the athletes, but it's really exciting too.
I don't know how you sit there and watch it, having gone through it yourself. I'd be jumping off the couch or clawing at the couch, for that matter.
Yeah.
So let's talk about swimming, because this is your jam, to be technical about it. And let's talk about the swimmers. I mean, they are putting on such a show in Tokyo. They're so amazing. Oh, yeah. They've won 16 medals so far. But listen, it hasn't all been easy, right? Katie Ledecky had a rough swim before she took her 6th career gold in the 1,500-meter freestyle. Now, I don't want to make it all about medal counts, but she's tied with Allison Felix and Amy Van Dyken for the 2nd most gold medals all time by an American woman. We all know who's on top of that list. You are 8 Olympic golds. How does it feel to hold that record? And as you watch Ledecky go for number 7 this week, are you sort of preparing a little bit to pass the torch?
Hey, I am happy to pass the torch to Katie Ledecky. She's my hero. I met her in January of 2020 before COVID and talked to her a bit. And she told me that growing up, I was her idol, that she really looked up to me, that I went to Stanford and became a doctor and all these things. And I mean, that's like the biggest compliment I could have in my career. I don't need medals. I don't need records to know that she was inspired by me and hopefully others as well. That means the most. So I'm happy that if she were to get that, I know as a seasoned Olympian, she's taking things one race at a time and just doing her best and enjoying the moment. I hope that's what she's doing. And if it so happens that she ends up with more golds than me, I am super happy for her.
What an amazing exchange you guys had. That's so awesome that she said that. So let's talk about some of the younger swimmers on Team USA. They are really holding their own in the pool. 20-year-old Erica Sullivan winning the silver in the 1,500-meter freestyle. Silver, yes. Awesome. Let's support that instead of just the gold. She was right behind Ledecky.
That's right.
She was on the Today Show talking about that moment this morning. I want to play it for you.
It's just awesome that I get to do this and, you know, really set a landmark for women and also do it in Japan where I have half my family. So it means a lot. And it's always an honor to do it beside Katie because Katie's going to forever be in the history book. So the fact that I get to be, you know, a small little footnote in that would be as awesome.
A small little footnote, hardly. We're so impressed with her. What else are you seeing and loving about these young swimmers in Tokyo?
Well, the U.S. team is always a good mixture of newcomers and veterans, and hey, they've been doing a great job. They're green, they're new, and sometimes that's a good thing when it comes to the Olympics. And you know, they're swimming their hearts out. They're being a part of the team definitely helps in that way. The camaraderie is awesome. And leaning on your older teammates or wiser teammates who people have been around the block to give you some tips and things like that. I know that's helping them too. It's been amazing to watch. My favorite race so far is Lydia Jacobi in the 100 breaststroke. That was incredible. And I've enjoyed reading about it online and people calling Queen of the North, like a reference to Game of Thrones. I think that's pretty awesome. Yeah, that was my favorite race so far.
I'm here for all of it. Jenny, you're an absolute legend. It was an honor to have you on the show today. And thank you so much for the reminder, right? Gold is great. Silver's awesome. Bronze is amazing. But for goodness sake, just being there is such an incredible feat.
Oh my
We're
gosh.
so proud of all of our Olympic athletes.
Yes, I am so proud. We're all so proud of you guys.
Let's check in with NBC News Now correspondent Simone Boyce. She's got the headlines for us from NBCnews.com. Simone, how you doing?
Hey, Allison. All right, we are going to start with some news on Better Call Saul actor Bob Odenkirk. He was rushed to the hospital last night after collapsing on the New Mexico set of the hit show's sixth season. Crew members instantly surrounded him and called 911, but there's no word yet on the cause of his collapse or an update on his condition. Well, England is lifting its quarantine requirements for fully vaccinated travelers from the U.S. and the European Union. The measure is set to begin on Monday. It comes after the U.K. removed quarantine requirements earlier this month for English residents who have traveled to countries with less severe COVID-19 situations. But travelers will still need a negative COVID test before they arrive in England, and they'll also have to take a PCR test on their second day in the country. Well, Armenia has accepted a ceasefire with Azerbaijan, both countries agreeing to the Russian proposed ceasefire after an exchange of gunfire at the border. Armenia says at least 3 of its soldiers were killed, and this is the deadliest incident between the two countries since they ended a 6-week war last year. And a volcano in Indonesia has erupted after a year of rumbling. Mount Sinabung on the country's Sumatra island spewing hot gas clouds and ash over 14,000 feet into the sky. No casualties or injuries reported, thankfully, but villagers have been warned about potential lava flow. It's the second volcano currently erupting in Indonesia, and it had actually been dormant for 4 centuries before it erupted in 2010. And we wrap up with a friendly reminder to always check those lottery tickets. A 45-year-old woman in Germany has been carrying around a winning ticket in her purse for nearly 2 months without realizing that it was actually worth 33 million euros. That's about $39 million. She was the sole winner of the June 9th drawing after she had picked a few random numbers that apparently worked out for her, and that ticket cost her less than $2. Allison, that is totally something that I would do, just leave a winning lottery ticket in my purse. Unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, but it's something that I would do.
See, I'm the opposite person. I'm the person who would buy 15 tickets that are worth nothing and just keep checking them over and over again, hoping that I might win $1. Thanks, Simone.
It's not really working out for either of us, clearly.
No, it's not. You're absolutely right. We have a deal. The bipartisan group of Senate negotiators have hammered out a $550 billion infrastructure package. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer saying they could vote on it tonight.
Tonight, I'm intending to call a vote to move to proceed to the bipartisan infrastructure bill. I believe we have the votes for that, and we will then proceed to do amendments and go forward on that bill.
NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Garrett Haake joining me now. Garrett, they were stuck mainly in a battle between highway and transit funding. Where did they land?
Well, Allison, it's important to point out this will be the first vote tonight on moving this bipartisan bill forward, not the last. This is a process that could take up to a week potentially to get this really mammoth bill across the finish line. When it comes to transit, $39 billion earmarked for public transit in this bill. The White House calls it the largest investment in transit ever. That's one piece of what's ultimately be $550 billion of new spending. There's more than $60 billion for rail. There's $25 billion for airports. There is a ton of money in this bill for the kind of hard infrastructure that these negotiators were able to hammer out. At this hour, though, there's still relatively little detail about how it will all be paid for. We know it'll include things like money saved that wasn't spent from the COVID relief bill, from some unemployment benefits that weren't used, and the White House is using projections of future revenue as a way to potentially offset the cost of this. So we'll see further detail when the bill text comes out, hopefully tonight.
The good old projections of future revenue. So, Garrett, I got to ask you about masks because the House is requiring them again, taking its cues from the CDC's new guidance. What are you hearing from Congress on the change?
There's a lot of confusion about the new rules here on Capitol Hill, just as there is across the country. For example, masks are required on the House side. Here on the Senate side, where I'm standing right now, they are only recommended. Speaker Pelosi today tried to talk about why she believes this was the right move to a requirement in the House. Here's what she told reporters.
The Republican Party has been delinquent in embracing the science that people need to be vaccinated. And that's why when we talk about the masking policy in the House following the guidance, we always just follow the guidance of the Capitol physician. There is no discussion about should we do it, should we not, for one reason or another. It's the decision of the Capitol physician.
Allison, I'm still seeing, even on the House side, lots of folks not wearing masks, lots of Republican lawmakers, lots of staff, frankly, from both parties. Enforcement is spotty at best, as I think everyone in D.C., where there's been no resumption of the mask mandate overall in the district, is kind of waiting for more guidance over what these new rules and suggestions from the CDC really mean.
Garrett, sticking on this mask theme, Speaker Pelosi shared how she really feels about House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy for opposing the mask mandate earlier today. Listen to this.
That's the purview of the Capitol physician, the official capacity mandate from him. I have nothing to say about that except we honor it.
Leader McCarthy says it's against the science.
Garrett, has McCarthy responded to being called a moron?
No love lost between these two ever, but the relationship seems to be getting worse by the minute. McCarthy did respond, basically bashing the speaker for the unclear guidelines that he believes are in place for things like, why you would have to wear a mask on the House side but not on the Senate side somewhere when you walk through the rotunda. Pelosi, for her part, tried to clarify and say this is really about respecting the science, which she doesn't believe McCarthy was doing, and on we go. Allison?
And so it remains confusing on Capitol Hill what you need to wear depending on where you are. Garrett, always a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much.
You bet.
It is devastating and demoralizing for people, whoever party is, to call this attack and continue to minimize it like nothing happened. It was an attempted coup.
While Sergeant Gonell gave that emotional testimony yesterday, most Republicans in Congress weren't there, and their leadership wasn't even listening. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell both saying they couldn't watch the first January 6th Select Committee hearing because they were working. So here's a question. What will Republicans defend if not themselves, the Constitution, and the Capitol? NBC News senior national politics reporter Jonathan Allen asking that question in his latest analysis. John joins me now. Oh, and John's in the bureau. Check this out. John, D.C. police officer Michael Fanone was talking this morning about why McCarthy and much of his party didn't watch this hearing. Here he is.
If you have people like Kevin McCarthy, whose members of his party have been downplaying or denying the events of that day, I think it's, not politically advantageous for him to continue to have to answer questions about a January 6th insurrection, which was at least in part incited by the leader at the time of his political party. So with that understanding, I do understand why they wouldn't want to watch that.
So, John, you write that only Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the only two Republicans on the January 6th committee, seem to see that they can serve both country and the GOP, saying that most other Republican lawmakers have chosen official silence. So let's talk about the GOP strategy here and their official silence.
Yeah, I think it's basically a poor strategy because what they're not allowing to have happen here is a counter narrative. Everyone saw that harrowing and I think very emotional testimony yesterday from those 4 police officers. Everyone can see Democrats on the committee driving home their point that the Republicans aren't defending the Constitution and the Republic against an attack on the Capitol, as well as the same point made by the police officers. And everyone can see that there are 2 Republicans who completely disagree with their party leaders and who think that it's necessary to get to the bottom of this to heal not only the country, but the Republican Party.
So, John, you also wrote that McCarthy's choice not to send Republican allies to sit on the committee may be an act of political cowardice, but it is certainly a political miscalculation. How come?
There's really no value to allowing this testimony to go forward. It's interesting. Basically, every time a minority party tries to have some sort of committee on its own, no one pays attention to it. But this is a committee of the majority, a committee of the House of Representatives that's commissioned. Television cameras are going to be there. The press is going to pay attention to it. And there is, as I said, the harrowing testimony yesterday, but also video footage. There's evidence to be seen here. This is an item of interest, and it's something that a lot of Americans care a lot about. I don't think that they're going to be successful in diverting attention. And again, what they've done is ceded the narrative entirely to the other party.
John, McCarthy called Cheney and Kinzinger Pelosi Republicans this week. You write that with his actions and his words, McCarthy's creating more political space for Pelosi Republicans, or at least Biden Republicans and former Republicans who put the sanctity of the republic ahead of Trump or the promise of winning power in the next election. Now, we just saw last night in Texas that following Trump doesn't always pay off, right? Republican State Rep Jake Ellzey beat fellow Republican Susan Wright in the runoff for a Texas House seat, and Trump came out and very vocally backed Wright. Now, I know this was a state election, not a federal one, but it's still Texas. Is this a sign of things to come in 2022 or even 24?
I'm not sure that it is. I think he'll have a mixed batting average. We saw that with Trump before. It is much easier for Trump to get people to vote for him than it is to get them to vote for somebody else. And in addition to that, what we didn't see is Trump coming out and bashing one of the candidates here. One thing that he's very capable of doing is taking people down, and that was not quite what we saw here.
Any signs, though, any inkling that there could be a change here, a break here, or is this still, as far as you can see, the Republican Party of Donald Trump?
Well, there are 2 different things going on. One is the voters, and there may be voters who are disinclined to follow what Trump does, but the other is the elected officials in Washington who remain terrified and are cowed by him.
John Allen, always great to see you, especially when you grace the D.C. Bureau with your presence. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Allison.
The president taking his infrastructure push back on the road while the Senate wraps up its bipartisan deal at home. Biden touring a Mack truck plant in Pennsylvania, underscoring the importance of American manufacturing and buying American made. NBCNews.com senior White House reporter Shannon Pettypiece is with the president in Macungie, Pennsylvania. Shannon, President Biden saying he feels pretty confident about the deal on infrastructure this afternoon, which came around the same time he got to Pennsylvania. What else is the president saying to workers there?
Yeah, he certainly didn't miss an opportunity to use this stop to talk about the importance of his infrastructure plan and to tie that to a White House initiative to try and get more made in America products into the federal procurement program. But here's a little bit more what the president had to say earlier.
You may have heard that in Washington now, just on the phone, looks like we reached a bipartisan agreement on infrastructure, fancy word for bridges, roads. And I'm working with Democrats and Republicans to get this done because while there's a lot we don't agree on, I believe that we should be able to work together on the few things we do agree on.
So you can hear, Allison, the president gets his information just like the rest of us do on his phone from that remark there. But obviously, this would be a very big win for the president if this proposal and plan can actually get to be a bill that ends up for him to sign on his desk. This is one of his key campaign promises. And of course, it would show that he's also delivering on that bipartisan nature of bringing that back to Washington, another key promise that he made from the campaign.
Shannon Pettypiece in Pennsylvania, thank you so much. Time for the bottom line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. Empty office buildings, housing shortages, rising homeless populations. These are all problems in some of the bigger U.S. cities. So why not turn all those corporate offices into apartments? Let's bring in NBC investigative tech reporter Cyrus Farivar. Cyrus, high office vacancy rates are an issue across the country, but you're reporting that even in cities like San Francisco, where homelessness is a major challenge and office vacancy is relatively high, developers, property owners, and city officials don't think conversions make financial sense in the long run. Why is that? What are the challenges here?
Allison, you're exactly right. And that is the exact question that I had. Our offices at NBC in San Francisco have been vacant for 18 months now, almost. And as you say, homelessness is a very serious issue here in the Bay Area and in California and large parts of the American West. But it turns out, it's almost an interesting formula to be able to convert them. The buildings, one expert told me that there has to be a, quote, Goldilocks factor. Older offices, they can't be too big or too small to be able to be converted into apartments. And the developer or the property owner, has to want to do it. And it's a multi-year process, and it can't be done very, very quickly, unfortunately.
So it sounds like you're almost better off just building new residential from scratch, but there are some situations where commercial to residential conversions work. You talk about this in your reporting, 100 Van Ness in San Francisco or 20 Broad Street in New York, but you're saying it's all about timing. Tell us more about what a tricky game that is and what happened in those buildings. Why did it work for them?
Yeah, it's interesting. So you mentioned 100 Van Ness here in San Francisco. This is an older building. It's a few decades old. It's actually in a really nice part of town. It's in downtown San Francisco. It overlooks San Francisco City Hall, just off the Civic Center BART station. This building used to serve as the offices of an insurance company, and it had a big kind of concrete facade. But it was a multi-year process that took to make that conversion happen. It began in 2012 in the wake of just a few years after the Great Recession. It took 3 years to fully complete. And the developer, he told me that had this decision to convert this building been maybe 1 or 2 years later, they probably wouldn't have done it. The developers and the property owners have to believe that they're going to make more money as a residential property than as a commercial property.
I once lived in the old American Airlines building in downtown Hartford. I guess every now and again it makes sense, but not in a lot of cases. Cyrus, thanks so much. We really appreciate you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You need a mask. You don't need a mask. Now you need one again in certain circumstances. The CDC's About Face this week has some Americans simply scratching their heads. If you are feeling a little confused, let NBC News Now correspondent Simone Boyce guide you through their evolving stance on face coverings.
A lot's changed since March 2020. We went from scrubbing our entire grocery haul of potential COVID droplets to attending overcrowded summer festivals. The only constant during this pandemic is America's constantly evolving messaging around face masks. Mask guidance got off to a bumpy start, even before the World Health Organization declared it a pandemic. In late February 2020, the U.S. Surgeon General told the public not to buy masks because he didn't think they protected people from the virus. But with cases ramping up across the nation in April of 2020, the CDC finally urged all Americans over the age of 2 to wear masks outside their homes. This back and forth was super confusing, but Dr. Fauci tried to clear things up.
And it was at a time when personal protective equipment, including the N95 masks and the surgical masks, were in very short supply. And we wanted to make sure that the people, namely the healthcare workers, we did not want them to be without the equipment that they needed.
But throughout the spring, former President Trump and Vice President Pence contradicted the CDC by not wearing masks themselves, even where they were mandatory. By the summer, and despite overwhelming evidence that masks really do work, masking became so politicized, it basically split us into two Americas, with one masking up for protection, and the other rejecting face coverings as an infringement on personal freedom. Masking wasn't always consistent at Black Lives Matter protests, but they were even more rare at large Trump rallies. Trump did go on to urge his supporters to wear masks by August, but that message was short-lived. In October, Trump returned to the White House after being admitted to a hospital due to COVID. He immediately took off his mask for the cameras before going inside, and this came hours after he tweeted, quote, "Don't be afraid of COVID." In the months that followed, the U.S. would see its highest spike in COVID cases. Not much changed in terms of mask guidance on the state or federal level, but most states had some sort of mask mandate in place at this point in the pandemic. Things began to look different once President Biden took office. Within the first 5 days, he signed a flurry of executive orders requiring masks be worn on all federal properties, on public transportation and in airports, and reinstating travel restrictions from places like Britain. In the next 2 months, the number of vaccinations steadily increased, and the number of COVID infections plateaued and started dropping. So the CDC released much anticipated guidelines stating that vaccinated people can gather in small groups, indoors without masks or social distancing. It was the first indication that things could be returning to normal. And eventually, the CDC relaxed mask guidelines again on April 27th, saying that fully vaccinated people could enjoy being outside without a mask, something that many vaccinated and frankly unvaccinated people were doing already. Just a few weeks later came the biggest change to mask guidelines. The CDC announced that fully vaccinated folks could ditch the face coverings and avoid social distancing in most situations, in part due to a significant drop in cases and a spike in vaccinations. But not everyone was ready to give up on the masks entirely, and some experts questioned whether the move was premature.
Why not create a metric? Why not say, look, these vaccines work. This is great. As soon as you hit this mark in your state, we say drop it.
That brings us to today. Cases are rising across the nation, largely due to the Delta variant. And because nearly half of Americans are still unvaccinated, the CDC is scaling back their May guidelines and asking vaccinated people to wear masks inside again in places with high COVID transmission rates or low vaccination rates. They also recommend mandatory masking for all kids in K through 12 schools.
They're changing their advice to the American public, their public health advice, based on evolving data and an evolving historical guidance. That virus. That's exactly what they should be doing.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Biden is prepared to wear a mask again if health guidance demands it. But administration officials are worried that returning to previous mask rules could hurt the already stalling vaccination rate by taking away one of its most attractive incentives. And for many Americans, that's the rub here. Are masks being used as incentives or for virtue signaling or as a true public health measure? We're learning in real time that clear, evidence-based communication can be just as important in stopping the spread of the virus as the masks themselves.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.